Hey, welcome to Curiosity Not Judgment, at least one half of it. My name is Birga. I may or may not have a dog jump up here and join me in a minute, just be forewarned. I have two dogs here in very close proximity who are looking at me and trying to figure out what's going on and may end up making a leap onto the couch. So you may see some interruption. But I felt like it was really important for me to take a little bit of time and share some updates about what's been going on. By the way, this is literally the third time I'm recording this because for whatever reason, the audio continues to cut out. So I am hopeful that this is going to be an opportunity to share the story all the way through and you be able to hear it at the same time. So let me first off say that Gary and I did not have a chance to get together this last week. It started off with Gary traveling, and then it ended up with a medical emergency over at my house that we are still navigating. So let me bring you up to speed a little bit. I typically do not record the date on these because I want this content to be evergreen, but in this case, I feel like it's important to let you know a little bit, let you know about when this is being recorded, and just, I don't know, if it comes up later on, then there'll be a point of reference. But today is Sunday, August the 16th, and on Monday of this week, August the 10th, my husband had a heart attack. And fast forward to getting initially seen at the urgent care, to being transported by ambulance to the hospital, to having echocardiograms and all of those kinds of tests done, and then the decision being made by the medical team that he needed to have a quadruple bypass surgery. He was initially scheduled for the surgery on Wednesday, but an emergency came into the hospital that bumped him to the following morning. So on Thursday, which would have been the 14th, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, 14th, he went for what was supposed to be a quadruple bypass, ended up with a 5-valve replacement, because when they went in there, one of the arteries that had been initially expanded by balloon during the echocardiogram, the surgeons decided to repair that one as well, or bypass that one as well. So ended up with 5 replacements, open heart surgery, and it was a doozy of a day for him, of course, but also for the rest of the family. Thursday was pretty traumatic, and we waited through, all of the times of the surgery, and then were notified by text message when the surgery was complete and he left the operating room. And so I had some sense of when the procedure started and stopped because of that text message system. And then we were up in the waiting room, waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting. And I had been warned that it would be a couple of hours post surgery before he came out of anesthesia enough to have his intubation tube removed and to kind of come to some level of awareness, being able to follow commands, etc. So many hours had passed post surgery, and I still hadn't gotten any type of a notification from the nursing staff that I could go see him. And while we were sitting in the waiting room, there was a code blue that was called out over the intercom, and that terrified me. When you're waiting for someone you love who's just had the biggest surgery of their life, you don't want to hear that message coming out over the overcom. It was not him. I'm super thankful. I don't know what happened with the person that code was issued for. I hope and I pray that they were able to make it through. But after a very long time, I was finally able to see him, and he was in bad shape, and tubes coming out everywhere and not very coherent. I was not permitted to stay in the hospital that first night. And fast forward to now Friday morning, I go over there in the morning, and he is describing a level 9 pain that is unrelenting, and that persists throughout the day. They give him all kinds of pain meds, and it doesn't help. And then all day Saturday, level 9 pain unrelenting, and they give him all kinds of meds, and it doesn't help. And could start this day, Sunday, starting out with level 9 pain. And I had brought with me some nectarines. He hadn't been eating well, and he really likes fresh fruit. And so he tried to eat a nectarine, and probably within about 60 seconds of him consuming the nectarine, his face went pale. He started having his eyes roll to the back of his head, and he clenched the chair and he just said 10. Like his pain had increased just by the process of, I think, swallowing the fruit down. And so it was a really, really rough first half, 3/4 of this Sunday. And I did a lot of crying today. I kind of came to the end of my being strong phase. I've been keeping it together pretty well, trying to get through this week. And I was kind of done after that this morning. And I forgot to tell an important part of the story, that this morning as I was driving to the hospital, I had been at home to feed the dogs and, pack up some food and all those kinds of things. And as I was driving into the hospital this morning, I was traveling westbound on I-40, which doesn't matter besides a little bit of reference. And I started to notice that eastbound I-40 had 0 cars on it. And I thought, well, that's super weird. Something is in the oven that is now to temperature. So sorry about that background noise. I was trying to make some granola. We'll see how that turns out. But anyway, eastbound I-40, no cars. And as I continue to travel, I then start to see flashing lights in the distance. And as I get even closer, I see there is somebody on the overpass who is jumping, committing, or in the process of making that decision about taking his life. And a terrifying scene, as you can imagine. So I continue to make my way westbound. They've got all of eastbound traffic diverted off of the highway, and I go through and on to the hospital, where we had the nectarine pain incident, and just a really terrifying several hours. And I want to say maybe at noon, I'm kind of losing track of time and space and days of the week. He was administered a new medication, or at least a new dose of a medication. And maybe 20 minutes after that, I saw for the first time his body relax just a little bit. And he said to me, there's a little bit of relief. And he was able to breathe a little bit deeper. And he was able to, his system kind of got out of that high clench mode, and he was able to eat some breakfast, and he fell asleep for like a full hour, which is a miracle because he's been not sleeping because of the pain. And I will tell you that little nugget of hope, that little breakthrough in pain relief, that little bit of sleep that he got was so critical for me. It was a hope breakthrough, and I needed it desperately, desperately. So I stayed with him another few hours, and he was drowsy, and I wanted to let him sleep. So I left and I traveled home, and at this point, many, many hours later, now eastbound I-40 was back open. The incident was ended. I have no idea what the outcome was for that man who was up on that overpass. But I began to think about him this morning in a state of no hope. And we were in a state of no hope, but we were given a small glimmer of hope. And so I really felt like it was important to just share these thoughts for a few minutes today, to ask the question of, do you have hope? And if you're in a season of life where things are kind of just trucking along and maybe there's nothing super bad going on or super hard, could you be hope for somebody else? I'm thinking about that man on the overpass, and I don't know if he has family or friends or any type of community, but I will tell you, one of our biggest emphases on this podcast over all these years has been relationships and community. And I am seeing more than ever how critical those two things are. We have been surrounded by our community, which includes our family and our friends, and an outpouring of love and support. And I'm so thankful. I'm so, so thankful. I'm going to have to be real curious over the next couple weeks, as we have to totally alter our lifestyle in terms of my husband not being able to drive, not being able to put any kind of pressure in terms of, getting up or out of bed. being very, very limited in his movements and his capacity to do things. I'm going to have to be curious about how we revamp our life and how we press into our community and ask for help and find support with those people around us. And then I think about that man again, and does he have any of those things? Let's say he was able to get a little glimmer of hope through the rescue teams that showed up and were trying to talk to him, and maybe he had enough of a glimmer of hope that he was able to come down off that overpass. And what do his next 6 weeks look like? Does he have support? Does he have family? Does he have community? So I just thought it was really critical just to get on here and share some of those simple questions about hope, if you have them, or if you can be a hope giver, a hope bringer, and to once again just encourage and promote community and relationship, and to do everything within your power just to be a voice of love and encouragement to the people that you have in your sphere of influence, because you just don't know. It's one medical emergency away or one mental crisis away from somebody losing hope. And so just to be present, to be intentional, and to choose to love well. So just wanted to leave you with those thoughts today. Hope you have a great week, and Gary and I will likely be back together soon. We'll talk to you later.